In this lecture, we'll learn about the popover component. With popovers, we can add small overlay content to links and buttons with different options for custom HTML, position, animation, delay, triggers, and offsets. Popovers can be added to links and buttons in the same way and will also appear in the same way. Let's make one of each and see it demonstrated. We'll create an anchor tag with an empty href attribute and the text popover for link. Now we need to add the data toggle attribute with the value popover. A popover consists of a title and some content. The title is the value of the title attribute, and the content is the value of the data content attribute. We will give our popover the title popover title. And add some lorem ipsum text as the content. The title and data content attributes must have a value for the popover to be displayed. Now we'll create a button tag with the type button and the classes btn and btn info. We will give it the text popover for button and add the data toggle attribute with the value popover. As we did before, we'll give our popover the title popover title and add some lorem ipsum text as the content. Before we can see this in the browser, we need to initialize it with JavaScript and jQuery. To do this, we will attach the popover handler to our popover elements. As our jQuery selector, we will use the attribute selector and select all elements with the attribute data toggle and the corresponding value popover. Now let's see this in action. When we click either of the elements, we'll see the popover appearing with the specified title and content. When we click again, the popover will disappear. Let's look at the different variations of the popover component. We can use custom HTML for our popover by adding the attribute data HTML with the value true. Let's copy the code for the button with the default popover, change the text to popover with custom HTML, and add this attribute. Now we just need to create some custom HTML content as the value of the title and data content attributes. Let's create a primary badge component in the title and use the strong tag, the small tag, and the M tag in the content. Remember to use single quotes for any attribute values for your custom HTML, since this is placed inside another pair of double quotes. Let's take a look in the browser. Now we can see our custom HTML appearing when we click the button. We can change the default position of a popover by adding the attribute data placement with one of the 4 values: top, right, bottom, and left. Let's duplicate the code for the button with the default popover and then add this attribute with the value top and change the text to popover on top. Let's copy this 3 times and then change the value of the attribute as well as the text of each button accordingly. Let's take a look in the browser. Now we can see our popover appearing in each of the different positions when we click the buttons. We can disable the default animation of a popover by adding the attribute data animation with the value false. We will duplicate the code for the button with the default popover add this attribute and change the text. Let's take a look in the browser. Now we can see our popover appearing without any animation when we click the button. We can add a delay for showing and hiding a popover by adding the attribute data delay with the delay time in milliseconds as the value. We'll duplicate the code for the button with the default popover. Add this attribute with the value 500 and change the text. Let's take a look in the browser. Now we can see our popover appearing and disappearing with a delay when we click the button. We can change the default trigger action for showing and hiding a popover by adding the attribute data trigger with one or more of the following keywords as the value: click, hover, focus, manual. The first 3 values can be combined by separating them with a space. We'll duplicate the code for the button with the default popover add this attribute with the value click space hover and change the text. Let's take a look in the browser. Now we can see our popover appearing and disappearing when we both click and hover the button. Finally, we can add an offset relative to the position of a popover by adding the attribute data offset with a value with the following syntax: vertical offset, space, horizontal offset. The offset values can be written in pixels or percentages and can be either positive or negative. We'll duplicate the code for the button with the default popover twice. The first button will get a vertical offset with the value of the attribute being 50% space 0. And the text popover with vertical offset. The second button will get a horizontal offset with the value of the attribute being 0 space minus 50% and the text popover with horizontal offset. Let's take a look in the browser. Now we can see our popover appearing with a vertical or horizontal offset respectively when we click the buttons. We have now learned how to use the popover component to easily add small overlay content to links and buttons with different options for position, animation, delay, triggers, and offsets. Go on and continue with the coding exercises, which will help you learn the correct structure for this component. In the next lecture, we'll learn about the progress component.